And we're off again. Let's hope that this works the whole time today. This time, I already had to start over once because it froze. I don't know. We changed the version of Microsoft Word, and maybe it's too big for what my computer has, and maybe I need to add to it. And be that as it might, your essays have been excellent. Everybody is putting effort into their essays. Everybody is really being quite thorough about them, being very specific about them. I am more than pleased with your essays, okay? Your comments, most of those have been very, very good also. Most of you were willing to be more detailed, to talk about specific things that you liked. And a couple of people were willing to say, oh, I didn't see that. So that's a step in the right direction. Don't be afraid to actually say to somebody, I don't agree with you. Do not be afraid to do that. That makes this whole course a whole lot more fun when people actually disagree with each other, so we get into real conversations over things, okay? But you're all doing a great job. I'm having so much fun. So keep it up, please, okay? Okay, so moving forward, this week we want to look at the concept of characterization in fiction, okay? And what do I mean by characterization? Well, all of us change as life goes on. None of us are the same person that we were a year ago. None of us is the same person we were a year ago, okay? I'm an English teacher. I have to say things correctly, right? And so, it only makes sense that pieces of fiction are going to do the same thing. Maybe, okay? In a novel, frequently characters change because a novel usually covers a pretty significant period of time. A short story may or may not show change. And so, as you are viewing characters, I want you to be thinking about the characterization that is being presented to you by the narrator, okay? So, what do I mean? Sometimes we get characters who just are the same at the end of the story as they were at the beginning of the story. They're the same person when the story ends as they were when it started. None of the action in the story changed them, okay? And this is called a static character, okay? Static characters aren't terribly unusual in short stories, but they're not the only kind of characters in stories. So, what is a static character? Well, a static character is a character, with normal human emotions and everything, but when the story ends, that character is the same person he or she was in the beginning. The personality, the character, what's in here in the person, or what's in here in the person, or whatever, hasn't changed. They are the same person, okay? And there are static characters that are just plain, it's like, okay, they don't change during the course of a story, and so their personality is static. It doesn't change, okay? And there are characters who don't even seem to have a whole personality, okay? And so there are different kinds of static characters, and I talk about those in the notes for this week. I go into detail on the different kinds of static characters. Now, you might say, how can somebody not change? But, think about people that you know, okay? Some of them have been exactly the same for years. You could finish their conversations for them. You know how they're going to act in pretty much every circumstance. Nothing changes. That's neither good nor bad. It's not a commentary on whether it's a good or bad person. What it is it's a way of looking at whether or not a person goes through any kind of a change based on the action of the story. Okay, so again, we get static characters, and then we get characters that are even less of a character than just a static character. Maybe they're the whole thing about what they do is all geared toward a single focus. Oh, I don't know. Maybe somebody is just a sports person, and all they ever can talk about is sports. Okay, so that's a special kind of static character that I explain in your notes for the week that I wrote up for you, in the lesson that I wrote up for you. And then you get something that might be called a caricature. Somebody whose, I don't know, whole way of being, whole personality, whole structure is so empty that they really almost become a cartoon character. For instance, you may have a boss at work who is always miserable. The only thing that matters is get your work done. Or you may have had a teacher or a principal in high school that basically never smiled. They were disciplined. If you had to nickname them, you might have nicknamed them Mr. or Miss or Mrs. Discipline, okay? Because that's all that they represented. Their whole life seemed to revolve around discipline. So that's the kind of character that we would refer to as a caricature, okay? Which is a kind of static character, okay? So we've talked about characters that don't change, but now we want to talk about characters that do. And those characters we put under the name of dynamic. A dynamic character is a character who changes. There are different ways to change, okay? And your book does go into more detail on this, but I don't want to bury you in detail. I want you to be looking for whether characters are different or are not different. So a dynamic character is not the same. Whatever has happened during the course of that story has made this person a different person. Their reactions might be different now. Their feelings might have been so upset that they can no longer focus the same way that they used to focus, or no longer do the things that they used to do. Okay? So a dynamic person is a different person at the end of a story than he or she was at the beginning of the story. Let's do a quick look at Emily. Emily Grierson. Was she dynamic? Well, at the end of the story, she was still very much stuck in her ways, wasn't she? I mean, she may not have been the same little girl, Emily, but really, her father wanted to keep her the way she was, I think. At least that's how I interpret what the father's doing. And at the end, has she really changed? Well, she tried to, right? But Emily's world, she doesn't want her world to change. She wants everything to stay the same. So you might view Emily as a static character. You might, okay? On the other hand, it depends on your viewpoint. You might say, well, Emily was somebody who was bossed around by her father, told what to do all the time. But after her father died, Emily became a little bit of a different kind of person, broke out from the mold that her father gave her where no guy was good for her. She found Homer Barron, who was really okay. I guess. We don't know that much about Homer. But, she certainly fell in love with Homer Barron and never wanted to let go of him. So it you might look at her as static, or you might look at her as dynamic. It depends upon your viewpoint. Okay? So in the stories that we're reading this week, and I gave you 3 stories in the lesson, watch the characters. See if the characters change. See if the experiences that they undergo during the course of the story make them any different from where it started. Now, one of the characters dies. The fact that she's dead doesn't necessarily make her a different character, although it might. It might, okay? So, questions, comments, you know where to get me, okay? I will, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. You're doing great.